and I came into this office wanting to do everything I could to encourage serious peace talks between Israelis and Palestinians. And we invested a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of effort. First year, second year, all the way until last year. Ultimately, what has always been clear is that we cannot force the parties to arrive at peace. What we can do is facilitate, provide a platform, encourage. But we can't force them to do it. But in light of shifts in Israeli politics and Palestinian politics, a rightward drift in Israeli politics, a weakening of President Abbas's ability to move and take risks on behalf of peace in the Palestinian territories. In light of all the dangers that have emerged in the region and the understandable fears, that Israelis may have about the chaos and rise of groups like ISIL and the deterioration of Syria in light of all those things. What we at least wanted to do, understanding that the two parties wouldn't actually arrive at a final status agreement, is to preserve the possibility of a two-state solution. Because we do not see an alternative to it. And I've said this directly to Prime Minister Netanyahu. I've said it inside of Israel. I've said it to Palestinians, as well. I don't see how this issue gets resolved in a way that maintains Israel as both Jewish and a democracy. Because if you do not have two states, then in some form or fashion you are extending an occupation. Functionally you end up having one state in which millions of people are disenfranchised and operate as second-class occupant residents. You can't even call them citizens, necessarily. And so the goal of the resolution was to simply say that the growth of the settlements. Are creating a reality on the ground that increasingly will make a two-state solution impossible. And we believed, consistent with the position that had been taken with previous U.S. administrations for decades now. That it was important for us to send a signal, a wake-up call, that this moment may be passing. And Israeli voters and Palestinians need to understand that this moment may be passing. And hopefully that, then, creates a debate inside both Israeli and Palestinian communities that won't result immediately in peace. But at least will lead to a more sober assessment of what the alternatives are. So the president-elect will have his own policy. The ambassador or the candidate for the ambassadorship obviously has very different views than I do. That is their prerogative. That's part of what happens after. Elections. And I think my views are clear. We'll see how their approach plays itself out. I don't want to project today what could end up happening, but obviously it's a volatile environment. What we've seen in the past is, when sudden, unilateral moves are made that speak to some of the core issues and sensitivities of either side, that can be explosive. And what we've tried to do in the transition is just to provide the context. In which the president-elect may want to make some of these decisions. Question: Are you worried that this inaudible President Obama, well, that's part of what we've tried to indicate to the incoming team in our transition process. Is pay attention to this, because this is volatile stuff. People feel deeply and passionately about this. And as I've said I think many times, the actions that we take have enormous consequences and ramifications. We're the biggest kid on the block. And I think it is right and appropriate for a new president to test old assumptions and re-examine the old ways of doing things. But if you're going to make big shifts in policy, just make sure you've thought it through. And understand that there are going to be consequences. And actions typically create reactions, and so you want to be intentional about it. You don't want to do things off the cuff when it comes to an issue this volatile. Chris Johnson. Question, on LGBT rights. President Obama, I'm sorry, where is Chris? Question, I'm right here in the back. President Obama, I'm sorry, didn't see you. Question, on LGBT rights, we've seen a lot of achievements over the past 8 years. Including signing hate crimes protection legislation, don't ask, don't tell repeal. Marriage equality nationwide, and ensuring transgender people feel visible and accepted. How do you think LGBT rights will rank in terms of your accomplishments and your legacy? And how confident are you that progress will endure or continue under the president-elect? President Obama, I could not be prouder of the transformation. That's taken place in our society just in the last decade. And I've said before, I think we made some useful contributions to it. But the primary heroes in this stage of our growth as a democracy and a society are all the individual activists. And sons and daughters and couples who courageously said, "This is who I am and I'm proud of it." And that opened people's minds and opened their hearts. And, eventually, laws caught up. But I don't think any of that would have happened without the activism in some cases. Loud and noisy, but in some cases, just quiet and very personal. And I think that what we did as an administration was to help the society to move in a better direction. But to do so in a way that didn't create an enormous backlash. And was systematic and respectful of the fact that, in some cases, these issues were controversial. I think the way we handled, for example, don't ask, don't tell, being methodical about it. Working with the Joint Chiefs, making sure that we showed this would not have an impact on the effectiveness of the greatest. Military on earth, and then to have Defense Secretary Bob Gates and Chairman Mike Mullen and a joint chiefs who were open to evidence and ultimately worked with me to do the right thing. I am proud of that. But, again, none of that would have happened without this. Incredible transformation that was happening in society out there. You know, when I gave Ellen the Presidential Medal of Freedom, I meant what I said. I think somebody that kind and likable projecting into living rooms around the country. That changed attitudes. And that wasn't easy to do for her. And that's just one small example of what was happening in countless communities all across the country. So I'm proud that in certain places we maybe provided a good block-down field to help the movement advance. I don't think it is something that will be reversible because American society has changed. The attitudes of young people, in particular, have changed. That doesn't mean there aren't going to be some fights that are important legal issues. Issues surrounding transgender persons. There are still going to be some battles that need to take place. But if you talk to young people of Malia, Sasha's generation, even if they're Republicans, even if they're conservative, many of them would tell you, I don't understand how you would discriminate against somebody because of sexual orientation. That's just sort of burned into them in pretty powerful ways. April Ryan. Question, thank you, Mr. President. Long before today you've been considered a rights president. Under your watch, people have said that you have expanded the rubber band of inclusion. And with the election and the incoming administration, people are saying that rubber band has recoiled and maybe is even broken. And I'm taking you back to a time on Air Force One going to Selma. Alabama, when you said your job was to close the gaps that remain. And with that, what gaps still remain when it comes to rights issues on the table? And also, what part will you play in fixing those gaps after in your new life? And lastly, you are the first black president. Do you expect this country to see this again? President Obama, well, I'll answer the last question first. I think we're going to see people of merit rise up from every race. Faith, corner of this country, because that's America's strength. When we have everybody getting a chance and everybody is on the field, we end up being better. I think I've used this analogy before. We killed it in the Olympics in Brazil. And Michelle and I, we always have the Olympic team here. And it's a lot of fun, first of all. Just because anytime you're meeting somebody who is the best at anything, it's impressive. And these mostly very young people are all just so healthy looking. And they just beam and exude fitness and health. And so we have a great time talking to them. But they are of all shapes, sizes, colors. The genetic diversity that is on display is remarkable. And if you look at a Simone Biles, and then you look at a Michael Phelps, they're completely different. And it's precisely because of those differences that we've got people here who can excel at any sport. And, by the way, more than half of our medals came from women. And the reason is because we had the foresight several decades ago. With something called Title IX, to make sure that women got opportunities in sports. which is why our women compete better because they have more opportunities than folks in other countries.